All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Richmond City Council meeting for Monday, February 8th, 2021 to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? So that's moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions?
This meeting is being recorded.
All those in favor? Anybody opposed? It's carried. Bill, you want to mute yourself, I think.
Okay, I can't see the screen. I don't have anybody up on the screen, so I will mute myself.
Sorry. There you go. I always forget. Sorry. Okay. Madam Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
None, Your Worship.
All right. We do have some, we have 9 delegations tonight, so I'm going to ask for a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda.
Sorry.
All those in favor?
Your Worship.
What is it, Councillor? That's
Your Worship, I was trying to get your attention to take some items off the consent agenda.
We're not there yet.
Okay, that's all. Sorry about that.
Favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So we have 9 delegations, and I'll just list them out in the order that they are going to be called. Laura Galanders, John Roston, Michelle Lee, Sharon McGugan, Kim McInnes, Jesse Galitz, Janice Sayson, Robert Brown, Imelda Nurwa Wasaya. Madam Clerk, could you please make sure everybody's muted here? Okay, so I'm going to call them in. The first one is Laura Galanders. And we've got 9 delegations, so I'm going to remind everybody, all the delegations, you've got 5 minutes. We will be cutting you off after 5 minutes, so please stay within that time.
Oh, I should turn my other volume down. There's a delay there. Can you hear me?
Is that Ms. Galanders? We can hear somebody. Who is that?
Hi, this is Laura Galanders.
All right, go ahead. You've got 5 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Laura Galanders. I'm a Richmond resident, and I'm speaking regarding the rezoning of Talisman Park. What I see in Richmond is that the majority of our rental-only developments are several decades old. Ones that are coming down are being replaced with luxury strata condos. Many families used to be able to find older single-family houses to rent, but those are being taken down and replaced with large luxury homes which don't get rented, or assembled into luxury townhouse developments which are neither rented nor affordable. What is Richmond doing to mitigate the loss of our rental stock? We began talking about using the tool that government gave municipalities to rezone developments to rental only back in 2018 during the Richmond Centre rezoning process. Here we are 2 years later, and nothing appears to have been done about it. We have 2 massive developments in for rezoning and OCP amendments, and the amount of market rental is less than what it was for Richmond Centre. I need to speak to the referral put to staff at planning last week regarding the covenant to ensure these new developments could be rented in perpetuity. Since 2010, as per the Strata Property Act, developers must submit a Form J which registers the length of time that there will be no rental restrictions, and this supersedes Strata decisions. There is no benefit to the developer to have rental restrictions when they're marketing condos to investors. As such, the forms are most always registered with 99 years of no restrictions. Therefore, the proposed covenant will actually not make a single bit of difference to rental housing in Richmond until after 99 years. The other thing that was particularly troubling about the referral was how it was referred to as securing rental housing forever. Condos that are rentable are not rental housing. Rental housing is a community of all rented units, more stable rent, longer-term tenancies, a landlord and a property manager. People and families interested in the buildings can submit applications. They can get on waiting lists. Most condos have been rentable since 2010, yet it's been reported that even with the vacancy and speculation tax, 1/3 of condos remain empty. Condos are typically luxury builds. They cost more to build than apartments and have the high operating costs like strata insurance, and as such, rents are typically 20 to 25% higher than apartment buildings. Most importantly, condo owners may not want to rent at all, especially not to a family or people with pets. whereas rental apartments are built to be rented. If you support and prefer new developments to continue on with being 90% luxury strata units, then you must use another justification that supports condos as a good investment or something else you think condos provide, but you cannot refer to it as rental housing because it's not. We've been building condos steadily for the past 10 years, mostly been rentable, and yet the housing crisis is as bad as it's ever been. Condos in Richmond for the foreseeable future are not an affordable option for first-time buyers to get into the market. Renting is the realistic option for the majority of our young people, young families, and workers. And it's your job to look at the city and look at our growth and what the needs are right now. All of our rental stock is old and dwindling. We need new rental-only developments, significant amounts of it. Rezoning to 65% market rental is not a punishment. It can still be very profitable to build. It's an adjustment from the current status quo. We used to build apartment buildings, and we have to make sure that we're developing in a way that will capture our residents who are displaced from that older rental stock. I don't fully understand the pre-zoning process and at what stage it seems to become too late to do anything, but it certainly isn't too late for Lansdowne. I want to commend Councillor McNulty for speaking to Van last week about possibly raising rental to 20% from 10%. I think we need to go a lot further than that, and we can, and I think we will, but it was a step in the right direction to start having that conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. The next speaker is John Roston, who is also going to be delegating on the Talisman Park item. And I will say before we go further, for the previous speaker, that was to be on Talisman Park, but in fact, mostly it wasn't. So we'll go to John Roston.
Mr. Mayor, is there a video? I don't get a video. I'm sorry.
Sometimes yes, sometimes.
City Chambers and yourself?
Just a minute. For the delegations, generally no.
No, but yourself at City Hall and the clerk. I get a phone.
Well,
that's all I got.
I can see my video. I don't know that we need to see the clerk, frankly.
Okay, thank you.
Unless she wishes to turn on her video. Okay, Mr. Roston, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Good. As you know, the Richmond Rental Housing Advocacy Group is recommending that the Polygon Talisman project have 65% market rental, 10% below market rental, and a maximum of 25% strata condos for sale to individual investors. And as Ms. Galanders just pointed out quite eloquently, when individual owners decide to rent out their condos, it is not the same as market rental buildings that are centrally managed at much lower cost with 20% lower rents and a landlord that wants long-term tenants rather than tenants that can be kicked out the following year if the condo owner decides to sell. This evening, I would like to address the question of whether rezoning this project for 65% market rental rather than 10% would make it unprofitable for the developer, or it's simply that it would make it less profitable. So what we're really talking about is what level of financial return council would like to bestow upon the developer. The major impediment to the profitability of market rental housing is the cost of land. So here you may want to follow along on the chart that I provided in advance. In this case, land nearby that is zoned for condo development is assessed at $32 million per acre. If the developer were buying the land at $32 million per acre, market rental housing would not be profitable. However, land zoned for market rental is worth about $24 million instead of $32 million, which makes market rental profitable. If the developer paid less than $24 million per acre, then there is an additional windfall profit on the uplift in land value from rezoning, which is what's being proposed here. It is this windfall profit on land rezoning that I would like to discuss. The chart which was sent to you should help illustrate how this works. The excellent and very detailed staff report does not discuss the uplift in land value because staff were not asked to comment on that. The figures on my chart could very easily be wrong, but to find that out, you would have to ask staff to comment. So, the property is currently zoned for single-family detached houses. It is assessed at around $7 million per acre for a total value of $95 million as shown on the chart. The developer is also paying for trees, public art, the capstan station, and also building streets and other public amenities. Let's take a wild guess that all that is costing $35 million, so that the developer's total cost is $130 million. If we deduct all the land that will be used for affordable housing, streets, public areas, and given to the city for a park, we are left with about 7.5 acres that can be used either for market rental housing or for strata condos. If you rezone those 7.5 acres for 10% market rental and the rest for condos, then that land is suddenly worth $234 million. If you deduct the $130 million total cost, there is an instant windfall profit for the developer of $104 million. If instead you rezone those 7.5 acres for 65% market rental and the rest condos, then the land would probably be worth only $201 million, and the windfall profit would be $71 million instead of $104 million. So that's the question. Is a $71 million profit adequate, or do you have to throw an additional $33 million at the developer to make the project worthwhile? In the absence of more accurate figures from staff, our position is that the normal profit on housing development plus a windfall $71 million profit on the uplift in land value from rezoning should be sufficient for the developer to provide the 65% market rental that we so desperately need. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. We'll now go to Michelle Lee, who is delegating on both the Talisman Park and Lansdowne Center, as I understand. Go ahead, ma'am. Are you with us, Michelle? Michelle, I think you're muted. Could you try unmuting? Sorry?
*6 to unmute.
*6 to unmute, Michelle. Okay, there you go. Are you there?
Hello. Yes, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to speak to the topic of Talisman Park, and I want to thank Council for wanting to do something to address the lack of rental properties in Richmond, but the proposal to restrict strata bylaws is not the way to secure stable rental housing for Richmond residents, as it is something that already exists in provincial law. What we as the Richmond Rental Housing Advocacy Rental Group are requesting is that actions that you take will actually make a difference for Richmond residents who require rental housing now and in the future. An immigrant family that I met a few years ago at my child's school asked me to share their story with you. The family was incredibly stressed because the house they were living in the basement suite, was sold for demolition, and they could not find a rental in Richmond. The husband was a student, and they were afraid of having to move outside of Richmond after they had settled into their school community. And I tried to assist them as I didn't know where to turn. Because I was staying on top of local developments in our area, I was able to connect them with the new development where there were some affordable or below market rentals coming up. And they were one of the first on the list. They have been living there happily now for a few years until recently when the husband took a position after finishing his schooling, and their income increased. Now they no longer qualify for the below market rental housing or low end. They were told that they had to vacate their home, but they could find no other options. I've spoken to her several times over the last 11 months as they tried unsuccessfully to find a new rental for their family with 3 children. These are her words. The landlords have undefined criteria in choosing a tenant. It's totally up to them. I wish there's a more fair, clear process in choosing tenants so all the tenants have equal chances. In a recent interview, BC Minister of Housing David Eby reinforced the importance of building a lot more rental housing in our tight rental market and the importance of giving tenants security of tenure in an anxious time for renters. He also mentioned the importance of restraining the excesses around speculation and preserving affordability for renters. He also mentions that most rental housing was built in the 70s and rental stock needs to be renewed immediately. Giving owners the option to rent in perpetuity is not the same as requiring secure, stable, and sustainable rental housing for families in all new developments across the city. It needs to be affordable and centrally managed, not up to the whims of landlords to decide who they want to rent to. And usually they only want to rent to young professionals with no children. If you care about age discrimination, then you should be able to extrapolate how a centrally managed system will actually make a difference. Individual landlords will not ensure that discrimination does not take place. We need equitable housing for all ages, and this is only accomplished with professional, centrally managed rental housing. We need significantly more market rental housing to provide for young families like my friends who want to continue to live, advance their careers, and establish their families in Richmond. Instead of this restriction, I urge you to take meaningful steps in improving accessibility to stable housing in Richmond. We would like to see 65% market rental, at least 10% low end, and 25% strata condos in all new developments. In the city's affordable housing strategy, which was published in 2017, it starts by saying, housing affordability remains an urgent issue across Metro Vancouver and in Richmond, and the lack of affordable housing is increasingly emerging as a key public policy crisis. This was 2017, and it's gotten worse. Yet there's very little mention of market rental housing in this report. It states, the city will consider policy options to increase the supply of market rentals in Richmond. I'd say it is time to take more action than this, and let's do more than consider it, and finally take decisive action to make market rental housing a priority in Richmond. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next speaker is Sharon McGugan, speaking on Talisman Park. Sharon, are you there? Yep, there you are. Go ahead, Sharon.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, okay. Sharon McGugan, President, Garden City Conservation Society. I'm speaking on Polygon Talisman. Creating Community, Part 1. At Planning Committee last Tuesday, a councillor commented about keeping the needs of the future Talisman community in mind. That got me thinking about how to create and sustain good communities, which include the natural world. When we save mature trees and the biodiversity that trees exist in, we do something great, something existential. For instance, We protect the existence of our various bird populations, including the raptors like hawks, owls, and eagles, one typically sees on visits to the Talisman Forest. That is an easy-to-see reason why we conserve urban forest in the Richmond Ecological Network. Doing that for our wildlife populations enables our community to know, love, and understand our natural world. The Richmond Tree Management Strategy 2045 highlights an elm tree at City Hall. With another photo, it shows the same tree on the Minaroo racetrack in 1951, half a century ago. The elm tree is considered high value according to the report, and this particular elm has the largest canopy spread of any measured in Richmond today. That tree exists because someone made a decision to keep it, thinking of future community needs. We're lucky. As responsible community members, we also need to think ahead like that. Thank you to Mayor Brody and the councillors that voted to refer the Talisman project back to staff to explore the better use of existing trees and to review the proposed park location. We also thank the applicant for collaborating. Clearly, keeping mature trees in their forest ecosystem is vastly better for the community than missing the opportunity. Creating Community Part 2. I visited a condo development in Richmond recently, built in the 1970s. Perfect for young families. The homes have yards, there's lots of open space and mature trees, there's minimal traffic, and the development has its own tennis court and small park. We can no longer make that kind of development possible. However, with zoning for rental only, the units can be made more affordable for young families to have a home in Richmond. John Roston has explained that. We are stronger for the community we create, where our children can still live in the city they grew up in and raise their own family. We are even stronger if our natural world retains space in our community as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sharon. We'll now go to Kim McInnes, the applicant, Van Prop Investments on the Lansdowne Center site.
Yes, good evening, Your Worship, Mayor Brody and council members. My name is Kim McInnes, and I'm the CEO of Van Prop Investments. First of all, I'd like to thank each of you for the opportunity to speak to you today for your consideration of our OCP amendment proposal for the redevelopment of Lansdowne, which is the agenda item number 17. I am here with Justin Gillies, our Vice President of Development, and we would be happy to answer questions as they are required. At this stage, we're seeking an OCP amendment to reorganize height, density, and public open space around the site to facilitate the master plan. We will require future rezonings to implement all of the phases of the development to come in the next 15 to 20 years. Now, our company has owned Lansdowne Center since 1984, and we're very excited about the future renewal of our property in the heart of Richmond. Van Prop has always been an active member in the Richmond community for almost 40 years. We're longtime owners of Lansdowne Center, and we're dedicated to delivering a meaningful and community-serving project on this extremely important central property in the city of Richmond. We're excited to continue to be a part of the Richmond community, and we will generate a constant stream of employment opportunities both in the construction industry and that build-out phase, as well as about over 4,000 jobs of active employment once we fully build out. We're looking forward to building an enduring legacy, and our retained ownership in the commercial mixed-use component of the overall plan is something that we're very passionate about, and we would like to continue being a very strong part of the Richmond community. Our vision and master plan for Lansdowne Centre, as you know, we're seeking to create a vibrant mixed-use community with homes, offices, shopping opportunities, parks, and amenities for everybody in the community. And we intend for the new Lansdowne district to be the new hub of the Richmond City Centre. From the beginning, our master planning process has been centered around defining principles of building community, economic vitality, livability, connectivity, and sustainability, all in a way that leverages the best design principles and introduces unique and transformative architecture. From the beginning, we have acknowledged that in order for this vision to be successful and be properly implemented and utilized by the community, our plan must reflect the community priorities and have the support of the community stakeholders. And we have taken careful efforts to conduct extensive public engagement with the community in conjunction with consultations with our tenants, our partners, and a diverse range of community organizations that help us to inform the master plan proposal that's before you today. We're extremely proud of the master plan vision we've developed, and we look forward to the many more conversations and our continued constructive working relationship with the city staff and council. With that, I'd like to thank you once again for your time this evening. And in connection to our OCP amendment and master plan application, we are happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, we've got a quick question from Councillor Day. That's of this delegation, right? Go ahead.
Thank you.
Do not unmute.
Not unmute, right, sorry. Thank you very much for that presentation. My question is, you mentioned that this is just the beginning, that this proposal that's in front of us today is just for the master plan, height, density, and so on and so forth. Can you explain the timeline and the different levels whereby, you know, council can require from you more rental housing and other amenities such as school space?
Yeah, please go ahead. Through your worship to Councillor Day, Jesse Gallus here from Vanprop. I'm going to go ahead and answer that question. Councillor Day is completely correct. Right now we are applying for an OCP amendment to facilitate the master plan, which is an amendment for height and density and reallocation of park space across the site to allow for a dynamic plan that fits into the OCP. Moving forward through the various stages, there are seven phases, and within their phases, there may be sub-phasing of which we will need to seek approval for new housing as well as the mixed-use component of the project. And our project would need to comply with the policy of the day of the City of Richmond, so we would need to provide the requisite amount of parks and roads and various forms of housing, including affordable housing that would be required.
That's on rezonings.
That's on rezonings. Yes, that's in the future. So after if we are, and we hope to be successful in being approved as the master plan and the OCP amendment at this time, we would subsequently come forward with a rezoning for the first phase of the project, which may include one or multiple parcels. And then that would, during that process, we would be required to provide the requisite amenities for that project.
And the second question was the school site. We talked a little bit about this at planning. What's where is that at?
We've as we mentioned in the last meeting, we've had discussions with the district school board. At the present time, they're reviewing their options and they're looking at multiple alternatives. We would be open to including that that use within our project. We think it would be a value-added amenity, but we have not actually had any firm commitment back from the school board.
So that's all in due
So
course.
something that we would, something that we would consider, absolutely. Yeah, in the future. In the future, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. And I take it, Jesse Galiz, I had you on as a speaker. I take it that, do you want to speak something more, or is that it?
No, Your Honor. I'm here as a team with Kim, so to answer questions.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. The next speaker is Janice Saison to talk about Lansdowne. Janice? Are you with us, Janice?
Hi there.
Go
yes,
ahead.
I am.
Go ahead.
Good evening. Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. As you know, my name is Janice Basin, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you about the Lansdowne Mall application as a resident of Richmond for the past 6 years. A little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Vancouver by working class parents who immigrated here from Hong Kong as children. So I am an average citizen whose greatest privilege was being born here, a world-class city with countless opportunities. Undeniably, what is plaguing this great city is a housing crisis. But we're not here to debate that issue today, but we absolutely need a high-rise, high-density development like the proposed Lansdowne project that would help alleviate the issue of supply. The real estate market is on the rise again, and it has proven itself to be quite resilient, even in an economic downturn. So after reviewing the development proposal online, it is quite apparent that the master plan for this community, a central hub with SkyTrain access and amenities, is exactly what the city needs. It is attractive, well-planned, and it simply makes sense. In closing, I'm pleased to see that you're formally considering the project tonight, and I would really like to just simply encourage Council to move this project forward. Growth is what the city needs to accommodate its demand, and this project will be a good step in that direction. So once again, thank you so much for the opportunity tonight, and I wish everyone good health.
All right. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Robert Brown, Catalyst Community Development Society, also to talk about Lansdowne.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Robert Brown is my name. I'm from Catalyst Community Development Society. I'm here to talk to the Lansdowne Mall OCP amendment application. As context, Catalyst is a non-profit real estate developer. We develop, own, and operate below-market rental housing. We currently have 1,400 homes either completed or under development. As an example, we recently acquired 31 homes from Intracorp at their River Park Place project under the low-end market rental program that the city has introduced. And firstly, I wanted to commend the city for that program. It is extremely effective at providing a below-market rental housing affordable to people in Richmond based on their incomes. We've been operating that, own and operate that building since the fall of last year. It is fully occupied. There was an immense demand for that housing. We typically serve households with a gross household income between $30,000 and $50,000 a year. So regular working people. We house singles, couples, families, seniors. We even have a very an excellent partnership with Richmond Society for Community Living and house some of the people that they support who have developmental disabilities. So it's a real microcosm of the community. People, as mentioned by previous speakers, there is a huge need for affordable housing in your community, as you're well aware. You have done an amazing job of bringing in policies to solve that problem, and the lower end of market rental projects are a great addition to the housing continuum. Not only do they provide housing that is affordable to people on that at a particular part of the continuum, but they also provide non-profit owned and purpose-built rental housing, which fundamentally addresses the issue of housing stability. So it's not just affordability, it is also about stability of housing. The number of people that we house in our housing communities who have received endless numbers of eviction notices or notices to move because houses are sold or renovated, and it is a chronic problem. And this kind of housing provides a very stable and secure housing. So from our experience, this housing not only being affordable but stable provides people with the opportunity to flourish and for their families to flourish and become a really integral part of the community that they live in, which in this case would be Richmond. So we would love to see this master plan moving forward and then the subsequent rezonings, which we would imagine would include the low end of market rental housing that is so much needed in your community. So with that, thank you and appreciate your time.
All right, thank you very much. Our last delegation is Imelda Nurwisa, also speaking on the Lansdowne project. Imelda?
Hi there. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Imelda Nurwisa. I've lived in Richmond with my family now for 5 years. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about the Lansdowne OCP amendment that's on the agenda. So as you know, this project's a really unique opportunity for Council and the community to create a dense, amenity-rich space in downtown Richmond. Not often you get acres of land that's next to transit in an urban environment that's being redeveloped. So I'm glad that this is on the agenda for you to discuss today. It will be a great opportunity for Richmond to have a downtown district that's built to today's standards. When I'm walking around downtown Richmond, I kind of feel like the sidewalks are too small or it doesn't feel very cohesive. So this will be a great new district that will be modern, has great urban design, great landscape architecture, be walkable, have affordable housing for the amount of density that they're delivering. I think it'll be a good opportunity to design for the Indigenous people whose unceded territories that we're all living and working in right now. Some concerns I do have are around traffic, and I'm sure you've heard that as well, so I'd just like to echo that. Having all this residential density next to number 3, some people say number 3 is already very slow, you can't get on the Canada line unless you're at Brick House at Richmond Center, so there's some concerns about how you're going to accommodate all this new density. But if you have the time with staff and community today to figure out how you're going to do traffic right, I really encourage the engineering to take a very close look at that, make sure it's a walkable area with lots of different modalities for cycling and just maybe being able to stay in the community and not having to get in a car. So I'm looking forward to the next stages after the master plan, when you do more discussions with the community and participate in that.
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. May I have a motion to rise and report? Moved and seconded.
So moved.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Now that brings us to the consent agenda. Councillor Wolf, you had some items you wanted to take off the consent agenda?
Yes, correct, Your Worship. I'd like to take off item number 16, 17, and 18, please. Thank you very much.
All right. Anyone else? Okay, the consent agenda with those things removed. We've got the committee minutes, Lansdowne Heritage Farm Master Plan, the First Nations Bunkhouse Program Plan, draft new soil deposit and removal bylaw. We have the grants for arts and culture, for parks, recreation, and community events, and the child care, all for 2021. We have the Sister City Advisory Committee Policy and Procedures. Then we have the stratification on Viking Way of 3671 and 91 Viking Way and 113,511 and 520 Crestwood Place. We have on the consent agenda one planning matter, which will go to a public hearing March 15th. 9931 and 51 Parsons Road, rezoning from RS1E to RS2D. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent?
So moved.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. We'll ask what speakers we've got on these items. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll be supporting everything on the agenda. Just a couple points I'd like to make on here, and I think it's important that people are looking in very, very tough times. But in terms of our grants program, first of all, a thank you to staff for doing all the grants from arts, parks and rec, child care, and health. When I add up the total that we're giving out into the community, we're giving over $900,000 to the community to help people out in the various programs to keep the same level of service and keep all our programs very viable for all the residents of Richmond. So, I thank staff to do it, and I thank those that supported the budget where this money is coming from and going out into the community because this is where it's money that we've taken. It's not from casinos; it's actually taken from other areas. So I think that's important to realize we're doing that. I am going to support the Heritage Master Plan on London Farm. I'm just hoping we will get back to some of the original concepts that were there. I think it's very important that London's was basically the second community in the south of Richmond over the years in terms of our history. It's sort of one of those that is forgotten, and the viability of it. And I believe the boats used to tie up there as well as they did in Steveston, and help the farmers take their produce and what have you up to New Westminster to sell, and also had some other important landmarks at the time in terms of developing the community. I'm happy to see the First Nations bunkhouse, something we're doing with the First Nations. I'd asked at committee level to make sure we have the input of the Musqueam and those people to frequent the bunkhouse and also frequent the Steveston. I think it's important that we get their information first. As many know, the First Nations were heavily involved in the fishing industry and along the Fraser River, including the North Arm. So that I think that that's input that we have to have. So I'm very important to see those areas, and very pleased with the minimum developments that we've got, and some of the units that we were able to get some housing out of it, or some extra suites. I think it's important that we continue to get that. And I'll ask questions on those other three and make comment when the time comes, Your Worship, that have been taken off the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting the consent agenda, all the items, and just want to speak to a few. Number 8, the First Nations Bunkhouse Program Plan. Well, thank you to staff for all the work that's gone into this report. And I know that many residents are concerned about conservation of Richmond's historic sites, so I believe that the First Nations bunkhouse offers us a unique opportunity to learn about the history and heritage of First Nations in Richmond. The report highlights how there is the opportunity to provide interpretation of the lived experience working in Steveson's fishing and canning industries. And also there's opportunity for new visitors and tourists to the Britannia Heritage Shipyards. And I think what's really exciting is the opportunity to provide educational programming to complement the BC school curriculum. I'm really glad to see and believe it's very important that the work plan includes working with local First Nations people. I do have one question through you, Your Worship, to staff. On our Council 68, it says, pending council approval of this report, staff anticipate refining the interior space program throughout 2021 in order to prepare a capital submission. So my question is that a capital submission for the 2022 capital budget as we just did the 2021? And then following up on that, is there an update on when we're going to have the workshop on facilities? That was you were going to have what on major facilities for the future?
Through His Worship to Councillor McPhail, I can respond to the first question there. We will be working closely with First Nations to prepare some costing for the interior space. That will take some time. We will push to have something prepared for the 2022 budget. But given the circumstances these days, we will want to work on the timeline that First Nations are comfortable with.
All right, thank you. And so the other part of that was, is there any update on when Council is going to have the workshop on facilities and the need in the community?
I will let my colleague, Mr. Young, respond to that.
Thank you.
Through Your Worship to Councillor McPhail, yes, we have developed a list of major facilities projects that can be reviewed in a workshop. That list is still in development, and we do anticipate that there could be a workshop later this year.
All right, thanks very much. Item number 9, the draft new soil deposit and removal bylaw. I support the recommendation, but just have a question. On our Council 77, under proposed volume fee, and in the second paragraph it says, distinct within the proposed volume fee structure is that projects that import soil from outside of Richmond will be required to provide a higher volume fee to the city. So my question is, on a recent non-farm use fill application, we heard from an agrologist that he believed that all the fill needed could not be sourced in Richmond. I mean, obviously, appropriate fill from Richmond is our first choice. So if this scenario was to come up again, how would that be dealt with? It doesn't seem fair that they'd be charged a higher volume if they can't source it from Richmond.
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, it is structured so that the fee is based on where it comes from. So that would be something that council would have to consider before passing this bylaw.
So there's no opportunity for like a one-on-one. It would be, I guess it could come notwithstanding the bylaw if it was that extreme. Okay, that's fine. And then just a comment on a general comment on the grant applications. We know there are many wants and needs in our community, and the information in the grant applications really helps us understand the diversity of those needs, and it's really important as we carry out our advocacy work, especially during the times that we're in right now. And many of these projects serve the most vulnerable members of our community. And I really want to thank and applaud the grant recipients, many of whom have had to really look at how to provide the services and projects to the community and to be creative and to pivot during this time of COVID. And also thanks to staff for their work on this. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Steves. Are you there, Harold?
Okay, I wouldn't unmute.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, I can't see it in my picture. Anyway, I just want to talk about 3 items. Oh, it came on. Amazing. The London Farm master plan, I'm very pleased to see that going forward. The plan is potentially to build a pole barn. I believe there are 1 or 2 original barns that may still be left in Richmond, and I've referred this to staff. The company that built the heavy wood playground, the adventure playground at Terra Nova, was the company that found an old barn in Delta and dismantled it and doctored the wood so that the wood was clean and useful, and re-erected a traditional barn in Delta. So I'd hope that we take a look at some barns like that if there's any available. I'm not sure if the Mallara Farm barn is still there, but it's about the right size. It was there a year or so ago, but that's the Pythagoras site. The barn we've got there is the Sprague barn, and I mentioned that at committee. It should be noted as that. It was the big barns were on the big 20-acre farms and up, and the small 5-acre farms had little barns like that one that's on the site. So we already have 1 barn, but it's for the 1 to 5 acre types of barns where they had a cow and a horse and a garden. The second one I want to talk about is the First Nations bunkhouse. We've got to find another name for that because it wasn't a bunkhouse. When it was built, both the men and the women in the First Nations community would have lived there. We don't know how many families would have lived in it, but it would have been family accommodation. There were no Chinese, there were no Japanese workers. The Chinese men made the cans and ran the retorts, but it was all First Nations women that were cleaning the fish and doing the canning. And almost all the men that were fishing were First Nations men. So it was men and women living together in that. So I don't think you can call it a bunkhouse. The Chinese bunkhouse and the Japanese bunkhouse would have had bunk beds, and I don't think that was what we had here. So we've got to find another name for it. I've referred the idea of having a welcoming totems out in front, which were quite traditional. We have no photographs showing it with this building. We know it had only 1 door, and generally there was a totem at each corner, each end of the house, 1 by the door, and maybe even a couple in between along the wall. And my thoughts are, we know at least half a dozen families that originated in this area, the Point family, the Guerin family, and it might well be, once we've discussed with them, that each family could have a totem. So that's my hope. The final one, I'm really pleased we're finally getting a soil deposit bylaw again. We had one years ago that was very effective way back in the 80s, and Bill may remember, I don't think it was on council yet, but we actually banned the soil from Expo from coming to Richmond because we felt it wasn't good enough soil. And then that right was taken away from us. Now we're in a position again of having our own soil bylaw. And I think it's important to note that in most cases we don't really need soil. We should have a rule, or the Land Commission should have a rule, that people should plant crops that are adapted to that soil. We have some farmers that want to change their blueberry growing soil to grow vegetables. We've got people that have vegetable growing land, clay soils, and they want to change it to grow blueberries, and there's just something wrong with that concept. But at least we'll have a soil bylaw. It's been long overdue, and I'm looking forward to us starting to save soils ourselves, mixing soils, and if they do come outside of the area, they might well be improved upon before they go on the land, and I think that's the funding from that would make that work. So I think 3 good projects there, and I'm pleased to support them.
All right, thanks, Councillor Steves. And to staff, I take it that you got the point about the name of the First Nations so-called bunkhouse, and whether you believe that continues to be appropriate, or you can make suggestions for the renaming of it. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just be briefly touching on 2 items. I don't have any other further questions to staff. I am pleased for the London Heritage Farm Master Plan and the First Nations bunkhouse, but some comments have already been said. So I'll carry on to item number 9, the draft new soil deposit removal bylaw. From that, I'm really pleased that we have secured item number 3 on that. which involves the further options and rationale for potential security deposits and that they be provided the next time this comes back, or maybe after that. The highlights for this is on page 110, the section 4.2, where it talks about potentially removing the maximum cap of $200,000, because when we think of some of the potential scale of projects in the future, that if the project and soil removal is to be that much higher, then so should the cost. Also on that one, the fact that peat soils, if we were to tell them to be to rebuild or put them back the way they were, peat soils take thousands of years to create, and also all the methane that would be released in the disturbance would also be extremely challenging to put back in the ground. So I would think that would warrant a higher cost. I'm pleased that council supports that going in there. The only other one I'll speak on is item number 11. That's the Parks Rec Community Events Grant. In the minutes from the general purposes meeting, I'm pleased, I think it's on page 37, that staff will work and communicate with the sharing farm, because their intention with their grant request was to hire a farm assistant, and they were asking for $30,000, but we've approved $22,000. So just seeing how that would impact the potential job that they're trying to fill, and maybe more of a challenge for them if they can't get a full wage that they're after. So it's good that staff are supportive of that. And then just one other point, I'm also very pleased that council at general purposes did approve staff to look into options for a new category of grant, which would be under an environment focus, because I have heard from a number of residents and groups in Richmond that they don't feel that their application fit with the other categories. So it would be great if we could have that option ready for the next round. That's all, and I'll support the rest on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Al.
Your Worship, just some quick comments on 3 items. Items 7 and 8, they're both related to the history of Richmond. I'm very pleased that the London Heritage Farm Master Plan is proposed by the staff, and I think this is going to make the farm much more attractive, and more people would be attracted into using the farm or visiting the farm. And I like the layout and the different sections being planned and designed. And I remember that 3 years ago when I attended the FCM conference in Halifax, I visited a heritage farm in Halifax with Councillor Steve, and I was very impressed. And it was a very active and well-used heritage farm. Even on a school day, there were families bringing their children to the farm. So I hope that with this new master plan for London Heritage Farm, we can do something like that as well in Richmond. And for the First Nation bunkhouse, I'm very pleased that with what the staff have proposed. And I think it's important in the sense that this is the only similar kind of building in West Canada. And it also complete telling the story of Richmond. We have heritage buildings for the Chinese, for the Japanese, and for the European pioneers. I think it's time for us to have something for the First Nations. And I've asked staff to try to preserve as much as possible the materials and to use them for at least decorative purpose in the future, so that it make the new building or restore the building look like the original one. I think it's a pity that we have allowed this building to deteriorate to the current stage, and it's been neglected for too long. And I also support the idea that we may have to find another name to accurately reflect the use of the building by the First Nations. And I also want to make a quick comment on item 14. It's about the strata title conversion at Viking Way and also Crestwood Place. Originally, I was concerned about this proposal with the fear that this might make it difficult to densify the use of industrial land in Richmond. And with the recently adopted industrial land strategy, I'm satisfied that we have a good balance between having stratified units for small business, and also have a provision of larger parcels for other kind of industries. So I'm going to support this proposal. So with that, I'm going to support everything on the consent agenda. Thank you very much.
Yes, and to Councillor Rao, I apologize because I didn't get your microphone on for a while, but we won't ask you to repeat it. Councillor Day.
Good, thank you.
No, just
Right.
leave it.
Not supposed to mute it, sorry. Yep, thank you. Well, yeah, so the consent agenda's got a lot of really interesting things on it. The London Heritage Farm Master Plan is really exciting for me because I'm the liaison to the London Farm, and I'm thrilled to see that this master plan takes the farmhouse back to its agricultural roots. And it'll be exciting to see where we go forward from here, and I'll keep everybody informed over at the Society. Number 8 is the First Nations Longhouse. For thousands of years, First Nations fished up and down the coast, and in the 1900s, we had a really rich community of everybody from Japanese, Chinese, First Nations, and people from Europe working together to make sure that the fishing industry prospered, and it certainly did. This building is obviously in horrendous shape, but we can rebuild and we can make it tell the story of the First Nations, and that's not only going to be good for education, but also for advancing anti-racism. So it's a really multi-pronged approach, so I'm excited about that project. Number 9 is the draft new soil deposit and removal. Well, this modernizes our soil bylaws and increases the deposits to like 15,000 to 200,000, and it also increases the applications fees from 600 to 1,000. This is pretty high in comparison to some of the other cities, but it's necessary. We have seen over and over and over again illegal dumping on our most precious farmland, and it must be stopped. So this step is critical to make sure that that happens. We handed out all kinds of grants, and what a process that staff went through to make the recommendations, and then council on the fly made quite a few minor adjustments to make sure that the groups that we were concerned about got their fair share. Item number 14 is the PC Urban strata of an existing, I think it's about 25-year-old industrial complex on Crestwood Place. This is going to allow it to subdivide into individual warehouses so that the owners can buy their own warehouse. And then some of them will be rented out. Now, I was a little concerned about this and actually voted against it originally because I was concerned about the lack of maintenance of the building. Well, since then, the proponents have increased their contribution for the operating expense in kind of a fund to 10%, which is significant. And they've also extended the leases of the existing tenants to September and December of 2021. And on top of that, they've also agreed to help relocate those people who are not going to be buying their units and will be moving on. So those are a lot of changes, and it just goes to show that when staff and council and developers work together, we can do better and better. And so I'm very pleased to see that all that got changed. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
Okay. With that, we're going to call the question on the consent agenda, remembering that 3 items have been removed. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. So that brings us to the items that are taken off the consent agenda, and there's a number of items to be considered here. So we'll go to number 16, which is Talisman Park. I'll ask the chair of the planning committee, Linda McPhail, to introduce it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 16, application by Polygon Talisman Park Limited to create the residential limited commercial ZMU 47 Capstan Village City Center Zone and to rezone the site at 8671, 8731, 8771, 8831, 8851 Canby Road, 8791 Canby Road, 3600 Sexsmith Road, and 3480, 3500, 3520, 3540, 3560 Sexsmith Road from the single detached RS1F zone to the residential limited commercial ZMU 47 Capstan Village City Center zone.
The recommendation is really long, so I'm not going to read it out. I'm going to say it's as written in the revised agenda package, and I would so move.
So that's moved and it is seconded. Go ahead, Councillor.
The application was first considered at the October 19th, 2020 public hearing meeting and was referred back to staff to explore better use of existing mature trees, review the current value for replacement trees, review the proposed park location, and increase the number of market rental units and report back. And as a result of the referral, staff secured additional public open space, which includes a larger city-owned park located in the southeast corner of the subject site. At planning, Parks Department staff relayed that the planning for this park would be a separate process in the future that will include a public consultation process as well as a needs assessment. As well, all the correspondence received that relates to the park will be forwarded to the park planning process. Additional mature tree retention on site within the proposed relocated city-owned neighborhood park area and retention of undersized trees previously identified for relocation off-site. Additional low-end market rental, affordable housing units, market rental housing units, and market strata housing units. And the proposed affordable housing will continue to be provided in the first phase of the development. Additional indoor amenity space provided as additional floor area over the 4 phases. And these additions can be seen by category in a table on our pages, Council 418 and 419. I do have a question, Your Worship, through you, staff. At committee, we heard that the referral on affordable housing is due back in Q2. Now, there is another referral from the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Committee on market rental and approaches to the residential rental tenure zoning. Do we know when that is coming back?
If I may, through your worship, to Councillor Fields, Barry Conkin here, Policy Planning. We are looking at end of Q1, early Q2 to report back on the 60 properties that we were going to implement residential rental tenure on. There is also another referral that we received at public hearing in October where staff were asked to prepare a policy on market rental. That is a base percentage in all future developments. We are still working on that referral. I would anticipate Q2 as a possible date for report.
Okay, great. That's good, because I think it's really important that when we look at the housing continuum, we look at all of it. Market rental, low-end market rental, cooperatives, and we look at it holistically. They all play a part in the delivery of housing. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor, do you want to mention number 5 that was added to the resolution at Planning Committee?
Oh, yes. The application was revised to include registration of a legal agreement to ensure no strata bylaws may be adopted that would restrict the ability to rent any of the strata units or the imposition of age restrictions on occupants of any strata unit on title in perpetuity on this development.
Yeah, and that was with the consent of the applicant.
Yes.
All right, we'll go to Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be supporting this. I think the developers made some good changes, but just on that last one doesn't necessarily give us any extra rental on it, Your Worship. It just means to say that people can rent it out. And that's something, and we have that referral to staff to look at the propriety of coming up with a policy within the city with regard to major developments like this or the size of development. And I think it's something we need to look at is the size of development as opposed to, a 7-unit townhouse or a 12-unit apartment or whatever. So I think it's something that we need to flush that out very, very carefully. I support it and second it to put it on the agenda. It's something I think we have to look at it in this housing crisis. I have a question of staff, if I may, through you, Your Worship. It's our page 419. The total of market units after is 1,014, if I'm not correct. That table on 418 and 419, that is what we're putting forward?
Through Your Worship to Councillor McNulty, that is correct.
Yeah, okay, good. No, staff have done a good job on this, Your Worship, but I want to follow up with a couple of questions and comments to look at. The rentals that's available in this particular project, and again, we're only going through first reading. The combined rental, is it 20%?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty.
121.56?
It's 10% of the residential floor area is provided as affordable housing units. The 120 market rental units would represent approximately 10% of the combined strata units and affordable housing units. So yes,
and they would be rented.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's rental. Okay. I guess my concern at this stage is when we did Richmond Center, we came up with a figure. We finally settled about 17%. And that is sort of the standard where we're at right now, in my opinion. Okay, now, can we change this between now and public hearing? Can we request between now and public hearing?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, in terms of changes to the proposal between now and public hearing? To
get more rental.
No, through the chair, or through your worship to Councillor McNulty, use or density cannot change between now and the public hearing, as the notification requirements would need to specify that. If there was a direction to pursue more rental, this item would need to be referred back to staff.
Can we not change it at public hearing?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, no, because if the change was affecting use or density, that is a material item to the public hearing. That would need to be notified as part of the public hearing process.
Okay. All right. I think it does. If you add 120 and 156 and you maintain that both are rental, then that's 276 units out of 1,000. That's over 20%. If I can quickly calculate it, the math teachers among us all. Am I not correct? That's over 20%?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, yes. The total rental on the site in terms of percentage of strata units would exceed 20%, yes.
Okay. So we have at least 20%. I guess what I'm trying to do, your worship, is look at our standard. I'm happy with the larger park and supporting that. I think it's in. I'm happy with the tree retention. Is there anything in there with the underbrush and the what I call the minor growth in some areas where we are having tree retention? Sometimes the underbrush is more important than the tree itself. If we want to talk about preserving of wildlife and what have you, or is it going to be cleaned right up? I'm thinking of one of the areas where they are preserving trees. There is some undergrowth.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, in terms of what may be saved in the park area, that would be determined through the future forthcoming park planning process. In terms of commentary on the benefits of understory, I'd refer that to our parks planning staff, Alex Kernicki, for further response if desired.
Okay, well, I think I'd just like to point that out for consideration, and I think it is. And the other question I have is in the amenity spaces and what have you. For the whole development, is everybody going to have the same equal opportunity to utilize every piece of the amenity space, whether you're low income or you're market or you're strated? If that's the case, they'll have an equal opportunity to utilize the facilities.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, the site will be subdivided into multiple separate distinct parcels. There will be amenity space within each of those distinct parcels. The rental units will have their own amenity space as part of those standalone buildings.
Will the amenity space be equivalent?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, the city does have minimum standards for indoor amenity space. Those will be further reviewed through the development permit should this item proceed through the public hearing process.
Well, I'd like to make a flag right now. I would hate to see that the low-income rental people don't have the same table tennis facilities, I'm being facetious at the moment, as those that are in market strata.
I would hope that they would have the same opportunities, or if it's a wading pool or whatever it is, that those come about. And I obviously I would hope by public hearing that we would get an answer on those kinds of things before we go forward. I think it's a good development. I think it meets many of our concerns, but I also want to have equality. And this was one of the things why many years ago we had inclusion with regard to low income, is because people were looked on as second-class citizens because they happen to live in the low-income tower, and they didn't have the amenities. So that's the kind of thing we want to make sure that everybody's treated equal. There's no one better than anything else. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steves. Are you with us, Harold?
Okay, guys. Okay, I will not be supporting this. I'd prefer to see it referred. My concern is I asked the questions both on Tuesday's meeting and Wednesday's meeting. And on Wednesday, we were talking about a couple of buildings were sort of low-rise, and we were trying to figure out why on earth we couldn't make them taller to get more affordable housing and more market rental. And we were told by staff, well, it costs more to do it. Then I asked the question at the next meeting, well, how come we had a referral? We first discussed increasing the percentage of market housing and the percentage of affordable housing in 2018. We referred it in April of 2019, and then we made another referral in I think it was October, November of 2019. So the referrals have been there for 2 years, and we didn't get a reply back. The intent of the referrals was that we would come up with a reasonable plan for both affordable housing and market housing and what percentages we would require, so it would be required of all developments, that we wouldn't be hit or miss. And I'm not prepared to go ahead with this until the report comes back, which we've heard is in quarter 2, and then we can discuss exactly what we expect of all developments. Whatever applies to this development would apply to the Lansdowne development, and all the way along the line are all future developments. So I think we need to refer this back and wait until we get a report from staff, because I certainly don't think that the amount of market housing or the affordable housing in this particular plan is enough. The reason we had to fight to get 17% at Richmond Centre was because they were pre-zoned decades ago, and they didn't have to provide it. And they still came through with as much rental housing as this development has, which has to go through a rezoning. And I think that basically we would have got a lot more if Richmond Centre required a rezoning, and we were trying to get more, and it just seems like we haven't even tried on this one to improve the amount of rental housing and affordable housing. In my opinion, we don't have to go to the 65% that's required if every development in the future is required to provide rental housing and affordable housing. But we've got to figure out what percentage that should be. In my opinion, it should be at least 20% rental housing in this one and 20% affordable housing, which would double the amount of affordable and rental housing that's presently proposed. So but there again, I was waiting for a staff report to tell us what the ratio. Should it be 30% rental and 10% affordable, or 20-20, or what should it be, based on a proper analysis, not just guesswork. So I'd certainly like to see this referred, but if it doesn't get referred, I certainly will not be supporting it.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worships. I'd like to thank all the people that came out forward at the beginning of this whole process, and I'd also like to thank the developer for coming together and looking at saving the natural forest in this space. I think this is really going to be a positive thing to save this. I do think, though, that council needs to maybe create some sort of policy that gives preference to forest-like spaces or other things like this that we want to save, because it's my understanding that staff worked really hard with the developer to actually put housing where that natural park space was, where the forest is. So, from the developer's point of view, from people trying to build a community and trying to meet all the standards of whatever it is. Whatever we want, if we can say it up front, it makes the process a lot easier for everybody and gets the housing built for people. And so just a question to staff, what kind of policy could we give to support this kind of thing for you? Because obviously you're planners, you have a vision of what this space could have been like, you worked closely with the developer. Like, what should we be, how do we give you the direction to give that, to protect those forest spaces and give precedence to those forest-like spaces?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, I don't believe there is further direction required on that aspect. In terms of review of development sites, we do look at what the city's objectives are in terms of the original proposal versus the revised proposal that is before you today. The vision of the park space on the site was a different vision from our Parks Department staff. We were looking at a much more active, programmable park space in the original proposal. The revised proposal with the relocation of the park space to the treat area will require a different type of park. That is, I think, something that will be forthcoming through the park planning process. But in terms of council policy or direction, I do not believe we require any further direction with respect to that matter.
Okay, because personally for me, I love the idea of the forest-like park. I think that the natural scape park, it's great. We've seen other parks going in Richmond that are the sort of standard build of a park, and it has the community space, where you can have a movie and this and that, but it usually takes 2 years before you actually put in a playground for the kids. Whereas if you start with something that's more natural, you have an immediate playground for the kids, somewhere for the kids to experience and to play and to climb and to jump and to do all the things they're supposed to do. And so I think, this serves the community really well there. Just a question to staff. What was the policy for rental and affordable housing when this application first started in the process? What were they actually supposed to put forward?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, the city policy applicable to this rezoning application is the affordable housing strategy. That does require 10% of the residential floor area to be provided as affordable housing. This application is in keeping with that. In terms of market rental, which has been discussed at committee and previously at this meeting, the city does not have a mandatory requirement for market rental housing as part of any development application. We do have an incentive-based policy currently in our OCP, which provides for additional density for the provision of market rental housing. This developer has taken full advantage of that incentive-based policy. The original application that was presented previously to council was at the maximum of that density bonus allowed in the OCP. The revised proposal has gone further and provided for additional rental housing in exchange for a further density increase exclusive for rental housing.
Okay, but this is negotiated specifically just for this site, is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, in terms of where we've ended up, yes, this is a site-specific negotiation in terms of achieving the 120 market rental units, yes.
Okay, because when we brought in that market rental incentive, it's 0.25 FAR or something. It's like, so compared to what Coquitlam has, it's a quarter of what Coquitlam offers. Is that correct? They have a 1.0 FAR add-on, I believe.
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, in terms of the city's existing policy, the extent of the density bonus depends on whether we're looking at a mixed tenure project such as this, which would involve strata units as well as rental units. It also depends on the form of construction used in terms of concrete versus wood frame. Additional density is provided for concrete construction to offset the increased construction cost.
Okay, but if we so choose, we could choose a more aggressive bonus if we were to so choose, yes? Like we chose a fairly conservative number when we first brought this in.
Through your worship of council, yes, the density bonus provisions or the incentive-based policy that was adopted was based on not significantly altering the form of development, which is currently permitted by the OCP. A larger density bonus would alter the form of development in most cases. In terms of council's ability to pursue a larger density increase, that is within their prerogative.
Okay. So So part of it was looking at having a mix of different types of buildings in an area versus like blasting up a whole bunch of cement high-rises in one area. So that's why there's the different number. Is that why?
That is part of the rationale behind those density bonus provisions, yes. The other portion that does need to be considered is the city center area plan is based on an estimated population at build-out. If additional density is provided, those population targets do increase as additional units are constructed.
Okay, so when we brought this in, we were trying to avoid having a concrete jungle come in and have maximum crazy density. We wanted still a mix of things, and that's why we landed on the numbers we did for now.
Through the chair, Councillor, yes, that would be an appropriate description of the existing policy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I have a few questions to staff. I probably won't be refer to page numbers because I'm flipping through the 1,200 page binder, and I'm not sure if my page numbers are out of order from the revised one that people might be looking at on their iPad, or so, because mine aren't updated on iPad yet. I'm still waiting for the content to update. Anyhow, I'm just going to refer to some images, and then I have some questions to staff. And at the end, I'd make a referral motion, but I think it would be the same as Councillor Steeves was just suggesting, which really just relates to the timeline of the former referral that was made related to the percentages of affordable housing. So I think Councillor Steeves can word that when the time comes. First off, I think staff have just responded to some of the other councillors' comments and have said some of the things I was looking for, such as the fact that this developer has gone to great lengths to bring this development forward. There's a profit side to it, but there's also the build for the community. And I really appreciate the changes that have been made. I please want to stress that. I'm very pleased with the direction. I'm warming up to this development proposed, but I'm not all the way there yet. Hearing the fact that they have maximized their incentive options that were available, that they took the density bonuses as they could, I think that's very encouraging to hear. I think they wanted to take this in the right direction. And as we've heard from the public today at planning and all the correspondence in between, and the specific examples and the people who are living it, who are experiencing the challenges with rental rates. The rental vacancy rate, to get it really accurate would be tough, but Metro Vancouver is like 2.6, Richmond maybe about 1.7. But if you're looking for the below market rental affordable, that's around 0.2%. So we're talking really small rental rates or vacancy rates, and reason for the developer to see the benefit in having more available in an area that's close to the downtown core, close to working, close to places you can commute without a car in a parking lot, to get access to the Canada line, to get downtown. This location has it all. I went to old Canby High School, right across the street to the west of this area, along Sexsmith. And I'd walk home along these trees that are now in the protected zone. And so there's lots of great features, but there's just a few more I'd like to present on briefly. I'll have some time, and highlight some of the images that I see in the healthy FIC report here on this. So on my page 451,
Councillor, I'm going to remind you, we've got a very long agenda and we have a lot of questions from a lot of people. So please make them pertinent to the point, and we need to move along.
Okay. In the staff report, there was a comment about the Richmond Nature Park and that they provide nature interpretation. I've worked there, volunteered there, I'm the liaison. I know what the Richmond Nature Park's responsibility is, and it doesn't reach out to this far away from the nature park. Another connection I wanted to make to the nature park in this parcel is the nature park has trails, and people stay on the trails. The fact that this we don't have it understood yet, what that park space is going to look like, I have a lot of concern because there's a lot of density already around this area. When they see the loss of green space and other open space, they'll gravitate to what's left.
and I feel the impact on that low vegetation, on the trees, will require some early onset work by our staff to help fence areas off, to close access off, because more feet, more impact, more soil impacts. I really value not just the trees that are being protected, but the place for their roots to go. Polygon has a number of other developments in the area where currently our city is redoing the paving around it because the small trees have nowhere to put their roots. They hit the hard packed ground, they go horizontal, and they push up our curbs, and people trip, and we have to spend all the money to replace them. These trees that we're going to protect go down deep, and this is exactly the type of trees we should be protecting. So just very briefly, 483 highlights where the barn owl hunting habitat it is. And it's not necessarily at the trees. That's where people will find the birds sitting, but their hunting is at night, and they do it when we're not looking. And when scientists are out there documenting it, they're hunting over the open space where they can use their skills to catch their prey. So that large grass field to the north of the trees, that's what really is a vital piece of this project. And if you ever ride your bike along Garden City Stretch, at night it's a cool breeze coming off there, where the rest of our hot island, the city heat effect is just a tremendous night and day difference. Looking at some of the barn owl hunting habitat enhancement that would be a result of this project on my 496, some of those areas are way out here in Hamilton. Quite a far way to go. At least there is that. At least this project has reached out, had some science input, and will work to benefit other places. But still, where these species are is at the site now. Looking on my page 540, talks about the soil subject, and I think that's a great piece. I don't know, no one's mentioned at this meeting, but the Garden City lands is likely going to get access to an excellent top-grade soil that this location has. But that's going to cause a lot of disturbance, a lot of dust, a lot of noise to get that down the road across the street. Whereas if we were able to enhance some of this area, we could have some agriculture for the people who live there and protect a little bit of a buffer around the trees, because the way it looks right now is the development is going to encroach on it, and the pounding and the foundation is going to have quite a bit of impact on the northern edge of the tree protected areas. Moving to page 634, I really value this page in the report by the contractor. It's the proposed park tree retention removal. So it shows kind of the trees to be protected, the dark green existing trees, but it highlights a lot of trees that will be removed, the ones that have kind of a yellow dotted line around it. And I'm very concerned about tree that's tagged 337. I believe it's the largest tree on the parcel, and it's been listed as one that will be removed due to hazard, maybe branches falling. There's no detail I could find on tree 337. However, I don't need staff to comment on it. The fact is, those areas might be the type that you would exclude full access for people. So if things do fall, which they naturally do, they can be in a zone where people are not. There's just a few very final points. There's the inclusion in the invasive species part of the report. Actually, I couldn't find where on my page 699 where the knotweed is. So it shows where lots of the invasive species are, but it doesn't map out where the knotweed is. And I've removed knotweed in the past and know how it works. But if we're protecting that area where kids might be going in short time, then I think we should take as much of the physical removal, not the chemical removal. I'll just say that now. And then finally, the viewscape. If you're familiar with this area along Garden City, page 700 and 701 shows this large grass field that had been farmed for as far back as my life goes in Richmond, and to know that will be completely lost, and the towers that will go here will impact the viewscape. That will impact the mental health, the access to open space that so much of us need and are nourishing right now, and to see what some of our residents have put forward as potential ways to protect the hedges that are being deemed non-important and are going to be removed. There's just so much to this project, and I think it will only benefit the developer, the future residents, and council if we give it that sober second thought and allow it to be referred back until after the staff report comes. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Rao.
Yeah, Your Worship, I'm going to be brief. First of all, I would like to thank staff, developer, and the concerned citizens for their contributions to a revised plan. I have visited the site twice, and I'm quite impressed by the work being done by the concerned citizens, and also the openness of the developer for inputs and proposals. And that's why we come up with a much better plan than before. While the retention trees in the park may not be perfect, I find them more acceptable. And also on page 634, I just want to ask staff the question, for those trees being marked as to be removed for being dangerous or at risk, is it possible that we place new trees on site? So after removing those dangerous trees, can we plant new trees there?
Through your worship to Councillor Rao, yes, as part of the park planning process, it will identify planting opportunities. If you're looking for further information, we do have park staff on the meeting call today to detail what that park planning process may look like.
No, that's fine. I don't need the details for now. I just want to emphasize that if those trees are being removed for reasons, I think we should try to replace new trees, on the same spot. And so on the park side, I'm quite happy with what's being recommended as revised. But for the housing units, I think I have some concerns. Now, I want to reconfirm with staff. This is the only opportunity for us to ask for specific numbers of rental units, market rental and lower end market rental units, right? Is it? This is the only chance, or we can refer it back to staff for further study.
Or we can refer it back.
Okay, so I would agree with some of the comments being made earlier that to make all the strata units rentable doesn't mean that it's going to be steady, guaranteed percentage of units being rented out. So I think it's two different concepts. Yes, we can make it 100% rentable, but it doesn't mean there's a guaranteed supply. And I think it's a pity that we do not have a policy yet for market rentals. And I think we need it urgently for the reason that, like this project and the other one, and the next one we're going to talk about, those are two very significant major projects. And because of the large number of units will be built, I would ask for a fair policy to make rental units as a requirement. And actually, I'm ready to make a referral saying that, we should have a 50% rental units for a project like this one, over 1,000 units. So the combination could be different. We could have 10% lower end rental units and 20% market rental units. So I would suggest that we should have a policy in place before we move on with this project. So I would either suggest that we refer it back to staff, wait until the market rental policy is being made, or if we have to make a decision today, I would propose that we come up with a number not lower than 30% of those rental or those units being rental combined.
Councillor Rao, I think we've got a choice here, but the choice doesn't involve. From my point of view, it'd be unwise to put on a specific percentage. So we can either approve this as we see it today, if people are satisfied, or we could, as I think Councillor Steves was the first to say, we can refer it back to have staff and the applicant take a further longer look at the affordable and rental housing that's provided on there.
Yes, I agree. Actually, I think too immature for us to come up with a number. But Having said that, I would support referring back to staff.
Ideally, we would have a consideration of the policies. We're waiting for a couple of referrals to come back. And so this would slot into the various policies, but there's no guarantee of that. But at least they can take a look at this specific project with that in mind. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Mayor Brody. So I had a couple of questions. First of all, in Planning Committee, we revised this application, which required that there be a registered covenant to ensure that all of the strata units would be rentable in perpetuity. I was wondering if someone from staff could explain the difference between the 219 covenant and then what is currently in place, which is the Form J that is on most, all condo strata units.
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I'll take a shot at that. I see Tony Capuccinello, the city solicitor, has also turned on his video. In terms of a Form J rental disclosure as part of the strata plan, the city is not party to said document. That document is filled out by the developer. The city is not party to the information that is contained within whatever they file as part of the strata plan. As a result of the city not being a party to the Form J disclosure statement, the city also has no ability to enforce anything within the Form J. It would be up to the individual strata council member or the individual strata corporation and the unit owners to deal with any discrepancies between that. The covenant that was agreed to by the developer at the suggestion of Planning Committee would be registered on title. It would now enable the city to enforce the restriction should it become apparent that the restriction is not being adhered to by the strata corporation. Mr. Capuccinello, if you have anything further to add.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Day, I would add that also the Section 219 covenant will capture or impose a prohibition on placing age restrictions. So that's a key consideration, and I would also emphasize that the Form J, which Mr. Craig referred to, is an optional filing, and that the number of years that would prohibit bylaws being passed restricting rental is chosen by the developer. It varies, so there's no assurance that that the highest number will be chosen. And I would also add that from a transparency perspective, a Section 219 is advantageous because anybody purchasing a unit, when they go to their lawyer for the conveyance, they will see that registered against that unit is a Section 219 covenant, as opposed to the Form J, which isn't readily available. There may be instances where a Form J does have a 99-year period.
I think we have the difference. Thank you.
Okay.
What else?
Yeah, hi, thank you, Thank you. A couple more questions, Mayor Brody. Okay, so I've got the referral here that we made in April of 2019. This is for market rental housing policy and encroaches for residential rental tenure zoning. And this was supposed to come back to council in April of 2020, so last year. We're expecting this to come back by June, given that we have two very large proposals on the agenda tonight. Could we speed that up?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, I'll refer that question to Barry Conkin as the manager of policy planning responsible for that referral.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, we are working on the referral from April, where the item was on the agenda but was withdrawn based on some public commentary. We've continued to discuss with stakeholders, and that will be coming back very shortly as well, probably end of Q1 for a report back on that aspect of it. And then we do have the referral from October that we are working on looking at the minimum requirements for rental and future projects moving forward.
So there, just to clarify through the chair, we're talking two separate reports. What can we get back by early, well, say springtime?
If I may, through the chair, we'll take direction from council in terms of a timeline they'd like us to get back, and we can offer to be back as soon as possible. It'll need some time to examine timelines and workloads to determine when we can come back, but it's very clear from the discussion today that this is an issue council would like us to work on, so we would commit all our resources that we can to get it as quickly as possible.
Well, Mayor Brody, in light of that, I think that a number of councillors have mentioned referring this back.
I'm going to deal with that in due course.
Nonetheless, I just want to say I think that we should consider that. My next question is regarding the height. Everyone's got this on page CNCL 614, and it shows the low-rise buildings, which is where the affordable housing and the rentals will be. We heard from the developer that in order to go from the low-rise, which I believe are 6 stories high, and those buildings are made out of wood, if they were cement, they could go considerably higher, because I believe 6 stories is the maximum you can do with wood. Given that there's such a high demand for rental housing, why would we not revisit that and say, okay, maybe we should do the same as we did on the others?
That's our decision as to whether we revisit that. Okay?
Can't hear you. Sorry.
That is our decision as to whether we revisit it.
Okay.
We can.
Okay, if we choose to refer this back, then I think that has to be a key part, is that we are shortchanging ourselves by allowing these 6-story high rental buildings when they could be considerably higher. And what I'd like to know is, I'm not sure if staff can off the cuff tell me now, how much more rentals could we acquire if we went up in a cement building and went to the same level as the other buildings on the lot?
Staff can comment on that in due course. What you're going to run into is the city center area plan, which talks about the height, and also you're going to incrementally increase the cost dramatically by going over the limit for the wood frame.
All right, and well, according to what we heard, there's a significant profit on this project, so I think we need to at least look at it. If Councillor Steves wants to make his motion, I'd be happy to support it.
Councillor McNulty, you already have spoken. Did you have a question? Your hand is up.
I have a question of staff. Staff talk about getting this report back at the end of Q1. Well, Q1 is March. The end of Q1 is a month from now. Can we have that report in a month? We're getting...
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, for me, this is the first report, which is the report back on the 60 rental sites that we have been discussing with council. The second report would be on any specific policy development, and that would take until Q2 with all things being equal for staff. Yes.
So the market rental and low income, if that was a priority, we asked you to switch the workload. It could be done within a month.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, I would say no, given the fact that the 60 site report in terms of implementing rental tenure is already drafted and we have done the consultation as required. The policy will still need longer time in terms of a minimum rental requirement for future development projects. That will need more analysis and more time to work through.
Even if we give direction to do it?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, all I can undertake is staff will do their best to get back to you as quickly as possible on any reports.
Okay. Obviously, I think there's going to be a direction when that comes. Your worship will deal with this first and then...
All right. Now I'm going to go to Councillor Steves. Councillor Steves, you talked about a referral motion. We've got the motion as it sits on the agenda is on the floor. You were, if I understood you correctly, you wanted to refer the issue back to take a longer look with staff and the applicant on the affordable housing and the rental housing being provided. And I think you stated a preference for general policy reports to be completed as a result of the referrals prior to getting the answers to those questions. Have I got that right? Is that generally?
That's correct. I simply like a referral back to come up with a general policy that we would apply to all developments such as this, and we can discuss this with the proponent as well, but whatever we do here, we should be doing elsewhere. And so we need to look at both the increasing amount of market rental and the market increase the amount of affordable housing.
Yeah, the reason I said it like that, because I think those referrals are out there. We're waiting for the return. So that's moved. Is it seconded?
Exactly.
Okay.
Seconded.
So that's moved and seconded. Anyone want to speak to that? Okay, I'll call the question on the referral. All those in favor of the referral? Those opposed to the referral? It is carried with Councillor McPhail, Councillor Liu opposed. So that's referred back. All right, Councillor McPhail, moving right along to the OCP changes on the Lansdowne Shopping Centre site.
Your Worship, can we make a motion for the low-income rental and market rental report to be a priority?
I think staff has heard your direction. I mean, they've heard it from...
Well, I'd like to put it in, we waited for ones from 219. Okay.
I think staff has that direction. They've referred to it in their remarks.
Okay, I'd rather have it in writing, but okay.
Okay.
I'll go with you.
Well, with that, we can ask...
Well, I think we have an opportunity to put it all together.
Yeah.
I don't think we have a choice to go forward with anything until we get this all together.
Please, our clerk can put a note to this effect in the minutes. So it will be in writing for you. All right, so Councillor McPhail. Linda, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Item number 17, proposed official community plan, city center area plan amendment, Lansdowne Shopping Center final master land use plan. The recommendation, again, is very long, so I will say as written in revised agenda package, and I would so move.
So it's moved. Is it seconded? So it's seconded. Okay.
Can I speak to it then?
Please.
Banprop Investments Limited has applied to the City of Richmond to amend Bylaw 9000, the city's official community plan, and Bylaw 7100, Schedule 2.10 of the OCP, the City Center Area Plan, for the property at 5300 Number 3 Road. The site is approximately 20.2 hectares or 50 acres in area and is the location of the existing Lansdowne Center shopping center. Based on the size, visual prominence, and complexity associated with incrementally redeveloping the subject site while continuing to operate the existing mall during early phases of the development, the applicant was advised to develop a master land use plan to guide the phased redevelopment process. Council did approve the OCP City Center Area Plan guide. The applicant anticipates that the redevelopment process will occur over 15 to 20 years. The application review process is structured so that it does not limit Council's decision-making authority for any future rezoning and development permit application related to the subject property. The subject application proposes to amend the OCP and Schedule 2.10 City Center Area Plan of the OCP to permit changes to the location and distribution of the 4 hectares or 10 acres of major park that the City Center Area Plan identifies for the subject site, to establish 4 distinct yet related public spaces, and number 2, reorganization of on-site density and building heights while maintaining the overall blended on-site density that is permitted by the existing approved City Center Area Plan. No increase in density over the maximum currently permitted in the City Center Area Plan is proposed, and key features of the proposal can be found on our Council 821. I think this was a good approach and was mentioned. No additional density is envisioned. the approximately 53,000 square foot of an indoor amenity space that has been earmarked in the plan will go through a separate process that will include a long-term needs assessment and the option to accept cash in lieu of the built space prior to the first rezoning application. At Planning Committee, several current tenants spoke at planning about the applicant's engagement process with them and their desire to continue on as tenants in the new space. That's all for me, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a shorter time to speak on this one. I think the referral that was just made on the last item would apply to this as well. I know things are at different stages. We're at the 7th phase of the planning, which began before I was on council. I think it was approved in 2017, the master plan land use. Anyway, there's another 7 phases of installation, so I know they've used that word twice there in the report. So I think I'm going to be making a similar referral to the last one. So my first question to staff, would that be relevant at the stage that this is at compared to the last item we just discussed?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, this application is significantly different than the previous application as it does not involve a rezoning. From my opinion, there would be no reason to withhold advancing this. Any future policy change would be applicable to those future rezoning applications, which would need to be submitted.
Terrific. And then to follow up on that, would you or would staff be able to comment on would this first phase be built first with people living in it before the last item, or is this one a lot further out from getting the people in houses?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, this is significantly further away from construction than the previous application. In terms of procedural or procedure to follow, this application, if endorsed tonight, would go to public hearing next month. Following the public hearing, there would be extensive work done to address the conditions, most notably the registration of legal documents associated with the rezoning, or I should say with the OCP amendment. That OCP amendment would need to be adopted by council before the applicant would be able to submit the first rezoning application. So it's quite a bit of time difference in terms of procedures left to follow prior to construction.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So one of my concerns is hearing the comments from the public and individuals I've spoken to on it. I can tell there's going to be a lot of heated comments leading up to that public hearing, which is great, good involvement. But if we're a month after that going to be making a major change to how much affordable housing and market rental this project will have, I think it would alleviate some of the added stress and concerns that people will have if only we were to have this follow the same pattern as some of the other projects that come after we get that percentage from that referral. So I am going to make that referral regardless of this being quite a unique project, and I appreciate that. Now, the need for rentals and purpose-built rentals is now. And I know at planning I was attending that meeting and hearing the comments around what could be put into the earlier part of this project to help with what's needed now for our residents, to keep people in the community, to allow our people who work here to also live here. And I think having that phase one and having it purpose-built rental, like exclusively family-friendly units, is what could be one of the additional real benefits of this project. And again, I have to say I'm really warmed up to the project. I completely support the 10 acres spread throughout, including a 5-acre parcel. I know just to the north of the Fraser River, there's a similar sized river district area being developed with about 12,000 people, and I think this one is going to be around 8,000 at the current plan. But that one's going to get 2 schools and a 30,000 square foot community center. What's good to hear that we are going to secure a city-owned indoor amenity space and outdoor space with this one, which is great to have in place. because we're hearing a lot of issues when those amenities come later. Just down the road on this one, there's to be a community center in a project, but now it's going to come so much later than the residents. So I really want to see as much amenities brought in the earlier phases. Just briefly, a couple more points. I know they're still a ways out for this, but sustainability features in this project, I feel are I know they're not meant to be in detail at this stage yet, but to hear that on some of the pages where it talks about the energy, the mapping for alternative on-site renewable energy sources, it seems to me a lot of that is not electricity, just so people aren't confused. It's more of the thermal energy providing heat for the buildings and hot water and all that, which I think is great. But to think that we're in 2021 and we're developing large-scale projects like this, and there's no actual electricity generated on site. There's no commitment to that. There's no requirement to that, be it solar panel or something else. But to say we're going to bring in that much commercial towers and residential, and we're not actually generating anything with these roofs and surfaces that we have available. So I would hope that comes back in greater detail as the phases come forward. My last comment, I've heard from the members in the public around congestion that was brought up today by a delegate, the loss of parking. There's many people who utilize this area as a place to go shop, but as well to park and to think of the congestion in our future when you don't have to go far from this area and there's all these towers that are currently going up. Wait till those are developed. We're going to see that this is going to be, we're going to be so blessed to have the open space in this project. And I really thank Vancorp for making Vanprop for making that part of this. But regardless, again, for the betterment of the community and I think of this development and for council, I think again it would be wise that we wait for that referral and then we make it a blanket coverage for all approvals made after that point. So that's what I'll make a referral on later.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I have a question of Mr. Craig. Again, if I may, you know, the OCP and the city's area plan are things of yesteryear. They need to be revised. I think the OCP is almost 20 years old, and things have changed. So my question here is, if we go forward with this tonight, are they under rules of the day when they apply for zoning? For example,
yes.
Would they?
The answer is yes.
So we could say next week if we put in 20% affordable housing, they have to have 20%.
Mr. Craig?
Through the chair to Council McNulty, yes. Future rezoning applications will be subject to council policy of the day.
Okay, I think that needs to be recorded in the minutes because I can support this going to public hearing if the public, but we're looking at 8,000 people, we were told the other night, coming forward. And I think tonight we hit a wall and we have an opportunity now to bring in. I remember when I put forward 5% affordable housing and it moved to 10%. And now I think we need to look at it again, and that's why I supported that. I think it's critical that we look at what we're going to put in for all our major developments. Because I remember when we put 5% in, it came in on a 15-unit townhouse where the developer had to give up 3 units so that we could develop it, and he still hasn't developed it, and they would put 3 for rental out of it, so we got 5% out of it. And I think it's very, very important where we are, because we can't be all over the map. Tonight, I think some of us were all over the map. We had no idea where we're going. But to me, this is a priority at the moment. This is the last major development in Richmond. And I think things are changing. And I have no problem with the space. But also, Mr. Craig, is the park etched in stone with the supposedly 10 acres that isn't really 10 acres? Is that etched in stone if we want more park?
Through your worship to Council McNulty, the master plan before you would secure that approximately 10 acres of park on the site in the configuration identified in the attachments.
So the master plan has already been approved, we can't change it?
Through your worship to Council McNulty, no. The current OCP identifies 10 acres of park on the site in a linear configuration adjacent to Lansdowne Road. The proposal before you tonight would reorganize that 10 acres of park into the 4 distinct areas that are identified, that being the Civic Plaza, the Lansdowne Greenway, the neighborhood park adjacent to Kwantlen University on the east edge of the site, and then the predominantly 5-acre park within the central area.
Did the park size, was it based on the 8,000 people? Or was it based on area, sort of by formula?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, the 10 acres of park is based on the city's entire public open space planning process. There are targets within the entire city in terms of availability of parkland to residents. The 10 acres is identified as serving the residents of this site as well as residents of adjacent sites.
Well, I'm concerned about livability and quality of life. We're getting some major developments downtown. If we were to say that we wanted a school, we are going to have some area outside the school for children to recreate. So let's say we wanted a school in there. How would we deal with that?
Through your worship to Council McNulty, we have made allowances for a potential school site in our review of this application.
Okay.
We have discussed the ability of various sites that would be able to share open space with the proposed city parkland on the site. I would point out that the school board's planning document does not identify a school on the subject site. But we have made allowances for that to occur in the future should it be warranted by the school board.
But I know what the school board has, and I don't want to interfere in anything. But when you're talking about 8,000 people and families, you're going to have school children. And if we put a caveat on how many rental are going to be in there, I think we've got to look down the road 20 years to see what this site will be like. So, long as we're guaranteed that they will be under everything that is coming into I had asked the other night about a retail. I'm very concerned about losing retail and office space and things like that. Are we going to have an equivalent of retail? I meant to ask Mr. McInnes about retail. Because right now,
Wayne,
there are many
tell
shops.
us about that?
Through your worship to Councilor McNulty, in terms of non-residential floor area, this plan would allow for approximately 700,000 square feet of non-residential floor area, that being retail. In terms of the vision for that retail, we do imagine a significant amount of ground-oriented retail being provided in mixed-use buildings. There will also be anticipated individual office towers as well to provide for employment-generating uses. In terms of the function of that retail, that would be developed through forthcoming rezoning and development permit applications.
Okay. My only other concern, to be quite frank, I brought it the other day, is getting into the downtown core now is extremely difficult, even with the improvement of roads, and traffic is going to be a problem if we once it's built out, along with the other developments on 3 roads. So, however, I'm assured by traffic that they're happy with it. Good luck on that one. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Steves.
Thank you. I will be supporting this going ahead, and I just want to make one quick comment on the last statement by Councillor McNulty. About 35 years ago, I voted against increasing the density of Richmond above 125,000 people. And we'll find over time that our present community plan will be increasing the number of people dramatically as we have to bring in more and more people that are moving into the area, into British Columbia. whether they come from overseas, from Asia, or from the USA because of warming climates in the United States, we're going to get a larger population. Denver, Colorado, as some of you mentioned, has very few cars on the road because they all park at the end of their LRT, and they have free buses going down the main street. And I foresee that was probably what we'll have in the future. So I'm not that concerned about traffic or parking. Once it gets too dense, then we'll find other solutions. In terms of this plan, this is the opposite of what we did with Richmond Center. And we learned from that, and we're fortunate we got as much cooperation over Richmond Center as we did, because Richmond Center was rezoned in advance. And after that happened, we had actually several other developers asked us to rezone in advance, and we wouldn't do it because we know if we rezoned in advance, we'd be stuck with that zoning. So in this case, we are simply setting up the groundwork for future rezonings, and the things like density and types of development will be altered as times change over the next 20 years. Who knows that maybe 100% affordable or 100% rental housing 20 years from now in whatever's left. But that'll be for future councils to decide. So this just simply lays out the overall plan of where things are going to go and what the neighborhood is going to look like, but it doesn't make the major decisions of what the actual percentages of different types of housing will be. And I think that we'll have to explain that to the public, because if we go ahead with a public hearing before we get the report back and decide what percentages of affordable and rental housing we have, people are going to misunderstand that, oh, you haven't done that for Lansdowne. We don't need to do it for Lansdowne. It'll be done as each phase comes in. We may change it from one percentage one year, the next year, a couple of years later, the council may change it again. We have those options open in the future. So I see no reason for not going ahead with this now, other than the fact we're going to have to explain that we are not setting any policy one way or the other on what type of housing it is by adopting this as a community plan for the area.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you. Pretty much going to echo, I was going to say exactly what Councillor Steve said, is that it seems to me that what we're looking at is changing the shape of the park so that we have that sort of heart of Richmond, if you will, in the middle of the Lansdowne, instead of just having a long, skinny park. And this just lays the groundwork. And so what the developer is able to do then is then go and find people to invest and start designing the first phase. So they haven't even brought forward the actual design. They've just done rudimentary drawings, and that's what they've got. So whatever rental and affordable housing and whatever other things we put in, that's when those apply at each rezoning. So at each rezoning that happens, the information, the rules of the day are what's going to apply. And we don't want to lock ourselves in right now to anything as a blanket policy for Lansdowne, because we may end up with nothing happening there for the next 20 years if we just, carpet bomb the place with a harsh rezone rules that aren't workable for now. So if we stick to the whole phase plan, that's what the developer was asked to do in the first place, is to create this plan. And until some actual shovels get in the ground, we're not going to get a community center, we're not going to get a new library, we're not going to get anything until something happens. So we've got to let this process start. And then, yes, we have to do a better communication job so that people understand what it is we're actually zoning right here. There's still an opportunity to change, to add rental tenure, to not add it, to whatever, as the future happens.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So as I look at our page CNCL 935, in phase 1, there are 5 buildings. Can staff explain, if we go ahead and send this to public hearing, we are not approving the phase 1 5 buildings, is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that is correct. Development of phase 1 will require separate council consideration of rezoning applications and development permit applications.
Good, thank you. I just want to clear that up because I think there's a lot of confusion out there in the public. The last thing, I think this is an amazing proposal. I think it's going to be the most incredible city center that any Metro Vancouver city has got. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to get it right. The only one thing that a little glitch is that I feel that the developers did say at Planning Committee that the school board had shown not too much interest and they were waiting to hear back from them regarding a school site. Well, since then, I've had the opportunity to speak to not one, but to 3 trustees, and they are very interested in a school site on the property. And so, I would be perfectly willing for this to be referred back, but given that this is not really going anywhere, it's just the master plan and there's still room for change, well, maybe I should just confirm that with staff. If the school board in the next 12 to 24 months comes back and says, oh yeah, we do need to have an elementary school for these 8,000 people that are going to be living there, if we approve this master plan today, is there room in the plan for a school?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, yes. Should the school board acquire a school site on the property, this plan has been developed to consider the traffic implications of such a school, the servicing implications of such a school.
Okay, so by voting to send this to public hearing, we are not in any way limiting the abilities of having a school down the road. So I'm pretty happy with this going ahead because I think that it would be nice to get to the next level, maybe in our lifetime. Thank you.
All right, those are the speakers. Councillor Wolf, did you still want to make your referral motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a referral to have this returned after the previous referral is complete around the percentage of market rental and affordable housing, just like the last items.
All right, is there a seconder? There is no seconder. So I'll call the question on the main motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? It's carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. Brings us to Farming First strategy update. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. Number 18, Farming First strategy update. Again, the recommendation is very lengthy, so I'll say recommendation as written in the revised agenda package, and I would so move.
Moved and seconded. Go ahead.
This report responds to the council referral from the council meeting on June 10th, 2019, that staff be directed to conduct public consultation regarding the update to the agricultural viability strategy and report back. Thank you to staff for a great report. And although I was disappointed by the relatively low turnout of bona fide farmers in the consultation process, I believe that this is a really good start and reaffirms our commitment to farmers and farming in Richmond. The Farming First strategy is organized around 5 major themes: agricultural land base, agricultural economic viability, infrastructure for agriculture, agriculture and the environment, intergovernmental support for agriculture. And many of the issues identified in the themes were things that we have been hearing from the farming community, like the long-term viability of farming, the importance of innovation, and infrastructure issues like irrigation and drainage. We did have a good discussion at Planning Committee, and I agree with the comments made around how can we promote local farmers and local produce more. Staff relayed that they are working on some initiatives and hope to have them ready by this year's harvest. And as part of the recommendation, a letter under the mayor's signature will be going to the Ministry of Agriculture, sharing the results of the agricultural issues identified through the public consultation process that require provincial action. Copies of the Farming First strategy document will go to our MLAs and MPs. And I look forward to the one-year update from staff on the implementation of the proposed actions associated with this strategy. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did speak to this item at planning at quite length and got some comments from staff, so I'm just going to summarize a few things. First off, I'm really pleased with the draft soil bylaw work that we just did earlier today. And I did learn from staff that this is more of a fluid document, and it can get updates and not just stay stagnant. And one of the updates would be potentially if there is a change in the security deposit from having a cap to having no max. That could get worked in later, and I'm pleased to hear about that. My number one concern for this proposal is sub-item number 4, and really I'd like to make an amendment, if I could, if there's support, to remove item number 4. And I'll just briefly touch on some of the pages in the report that back up the reason for that. Now, what maybe one day I'd like to be a new farmer, and I'd like to own agricultural land. This item here would apply to someone like me. I'm not an existing farmer. I don't have farmland. I can't prove I'm bona fide in any way as a farmer. But to then allow someone to get a report written saying, here's my farm plan. I need to remove all the topsoil. I need to bring in all this fill. The City of Richmond, please approve me to take this to Agricultural Land Commission so I can do this non-farm use. That's all well and good, and I think that pathway is correct. But what this item number 4 does is it completely erodes any value in the environmental features of the land, be it the lockup of the carbon and the methane, be it the biodiversity that's provided to that site, and the pollinators that actually help to pollinate some of the crops when their bees all die, and other things related to water retention and all the other ecosystem services. So this point here, number 4, basically allows farming to trump all other features. And albeit I am a human being and I do eat food, and I know food is important, very important. But without the environment, then there is no life to eat food anyway. So I think this is going in the wrong direction, that point, and I would like council support to amend that. Just want to briefly suggest some other areas where you could verify that this is the only point that needs to be altered.
Why don't you make your motion? Make your motion.
Okay. I'd like to make the amendment to remove the sub-bullet 4 from this item.
Is it seconded? It's seconded. We are on the amendment. What else would you like to say about your amendment?
Thank you. I'll be very brief because I did touch on some of these before. And as we heard, that there is themes to this, and the agriculture and the environment theme is where it's lacking. So if you just look through a couple other strategies that our cities already adopted. So we have the ecological network mapping strategy. It highlights where the agricultural land is. But if you look in this report, I think one of the most striking visuals, is there's 2 of them actually, is on page 1042. It shows the ALR sites, the properties that have ESAs in them, and some of them are kind of shaded gray. And note that there's a lot of them. So basically, there's water courses, there's growth of bog forest properties. There's all sorts of things that map highlights. And if you just glance to another or any other place where it shows where the ALR is, that takes a huge significant value to what we have, which is Richmond, which is so little left. And to allow this to let any new farmer get millions of dollars from tipping fees and then say, you know what, I've changed my mind, I'm not going to be a farmer anymore, and back out of it. And all that damage is done. We can't reverse it. We can top dressing, fix it up, but there's no going back to putting peat in. There's no more water retention. There's no more connection between the sphagnum moss that has been there for thousands of years before us. And so I think that visual should be striking enough that I know people who want to farm in Richmond who've identified sites, and they were somewhat floored that they could actually go in and be given the ability to put a road in and remove all existing features just so they can bring in fill and on top of that plant whatever they want. It's a completely destructive piece that I think needs to be removed and I think needs to be done today.
All right, we're going to call the question on this amendment to strike out number 4. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is defeated. Councillor Al, Councillor McPhail, Steves, Lou, and McNulty opposed. All right, Councillor Al.
Yes, Your Worship, I just want to say that I'm very supportive of this initiative. And I just want to comment on a few things. Number one is on theme 2, objective 1. I think this is a very important aspect of our strategy. I think we have to help new farmers to get into the business. And some of the comments or suggestions are very good. I think we need to help connect the owners of farmland with new farmers, and also to work with other levels of government to help those new farmers to get into the farming. The second thing is about the food hubs. We receive many comments on that, saying that we should encourage food hubs in Richmond, and I think that's a good idea. And I think that could also be another aspect of the revitalizing our food production industry in Richmond, and that would be a very important economic aspect. And thirdly, I also want to see that we can encourage local supermarkets to have sections for local produce. I know that, yes, we have the farmers market, but they can only do that much. But if we have local supermarkets supporting our local farmers by having designated sections for their products, then I think that would really go a long way. So I would suggest that, yes, we cannot mandate or make it into an requirement, but I hope that our Economic Development Department can look into that and see how we can encourage local supermarkets to have a section for the local farmers. Those are my comments.
All right, let's call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried with Councillor Wolf opposed. That brings us to the items noted off the consent agenda. The first one is for the Mineral Aquatic Center, the Facility Condition Program and Costing Update. And the committee recommendation is that staff be authorized to proceed with option 1, demolition of the Mineral Aquatic Center as described in the staff report, which is outlined detailed in the agenda. And that secondly, that a capital project in the amount of $2,700,000 funded by the rate stabilization account to demolish the Mineral Aquatic Center is described, et cetera, in the various reports as outlined there. And I would so move. Is it second? And it's seconded. Just a brief outline, because there are some of the past reports are in the materials, but in the past reports, when we were talking about what to do with the Mineral Aquatic Center, given the fact that we now have the Center for Active Living, to repurpose the entire building was going to cost $21 to $27 million. And what is given as an alternative here is to repurpose half of the building for $8.8 million. There would be extensive renovations for a 10 to 15 year lifespan. Half the building would be used, half the building would be boarded up. And the use is really indefinite. It's not very well prescribed, but it would be light type of uses. And the alternative which is proposed is that the building be demolished and given back to the people so that they could have green space to compensate, at least in part, for the land that was taken out of Minaroo Park for the Center for Active Living. And I frankly fully support this. You like to repurpose old buildings where it makes sense and where there is a heritage value. I don't think that this passes that test, and certainly the use for a relatively short period of time, as opposed to the senior center, which is going to be used for 10 or 15 years, which could be repurposed for the arts community for about roughly $1 million and a half. So I think this doesn't make sense to repurpose that building. I think it should be demolished. council had previously decided on that before that there was a long involved discussion about it. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. I hear what you're saying, and I've read the staff reports, but I don't agree. I think that in many cities around the world, buildings like this are prioritized for repurposing. And I think this iconic building, this cool A-frame, could be used for sports, performing arts, artifact storage, or we could just rent it out to an outside group and let them do the renovations. I think spending $2.7 million to tear it down is a complete waste of money, because once the building is gone, you're going to have what? A green space surrounded by 3 roads. It's not like you're ever going to be playing soccer there or anything like that. It's not a valuable green space. Green space that is in a park or as part of a complex that has indoor-outdoor uses. Now that makes sense, but honestly, this is not the right location. We repurposed the annex, what used to be the police station over on Mineral Boulevard, and now we're spending millions to upgrade it and to make lots of use out of that square footage. So I can't possibly support demolishing this iconic building. I think it has such history for so many of us, and I believe that it could be repurposed and it would not cost $8.8 million. Thank you very much. I'll be voting against this.
Councillor Steves.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be opposing demolishing the building as well. If it's going to cost $8.7 or $8 million, if you deduct the cost of tearing it down at $2.7, to refurbish it really is only costing us $5 million, because you're saving the $2.7 that you would use to knock it down and have nothing. So I think it's more important to spend the money to fix it up. I disagree that it would even cost that much money in terms of what uses we make of it. When we looked at the proposal by the wrestling club, they were looking at what was done in the USA, and they didn't do the major upgrades that we're saying we should be doing here. It's interesting that we have to upgrade to the modern building code, whatever that is, for just about everything, when the building's been in use under the existing code for the last 30 years or so. It is an iconic building. It was a period of time when A-frames were very popular, and I think it's just as important as any of the older buildings in terms of the history of this community. I go back a long time when we had a major campaign to have an indoor pool in Richmond, and what a battle it was. We fought with council for years, and eventually we got the pool here at Mineral. So it's got a rich history, great building, and I think it'd be a shame to knock it down.
Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Sorry if I sound a little bit different. My other microphone just battery died. So I just have 3 brief points to follow what was just said. I support everything that Councillor Steves and Councillor Day just said. I'll also be opposing this, as I did in general purposes, for the 3 reasons I'll suggest here. That we haven't even asked the community groups what they potentially could do. There's a lot of innovative businesses and individuals that could share some insight into this before a decision of demolishing is made. I think we could get some options rather than the full restoration or nothing. So to have open space as part of that 11,000 square foot, and using some of the existing large wooden beams that are up there, as opposed to putting them into a burner to make concrete. And then finally, the last one is I was disappointed at general purposes that I couldn't get support for an amendment to have a target of recycling 99% of the material. This is a goal that's made in other public facilities nearby. There's groups that aim to do this, and that would be one bright spot of this demolition if it did go ahead, that it could be recycled to the highest standard available. So those are the reasons I'll be opposing what's on the floor today. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support the recommendation on the floor as I did at committee. And for the same reasons, Mineru Park is the green heart of Richmond. And when the new Mineru Center for Active Living was contemplated, it was, as you mentioned, it was always the original plan to convert the this space back to Parkland and give it back to the citizens of Richmond. I do have a question to you, Your Worship, to staff. How will this be incorporated into the Minaroo Park plan? What is the plan for, if this passes and the building is demolished, how will this be incorporated? Minaroo Park plan, which is already underway.
Through your worship, to Councillor McPhail, we have been waiting for the decision to happen on this building, and similar to the facility study. So once we get direction on this, then we'll be incorporating it back into the plan and bringing something forward.
All right, thank you. We've had many reports over the years, and always staff looked at the facility condition, the suitability of facilities for other uses, the cost of construction, new versus repurposing, ongoing operational costs, and budget impacts. They hired outside professionals to assess the building, and it was not recommended. The other thing that I was thinking about was when we took down the Minaroo Park Pavilion, we did a process where we engaged the community, and it was, to memorialize the building. And this is an iconic building. I live near there. I spent many, many summers swimming at that pool, and I wondered if staff could think of something like that again. I think the community might enjoy the opportunity to say goodbye and to think about their memories that they had there as their childhood.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple questions to staff. Do we have the opportunity to not meet modern building codes? Like, it seems to me that if I want to open, a store in Steveston, if it was owned by somebody else for a long time and they don't have an accessible bathroom, I have to basically rebuild the bathroom, put in an accessible bathroom, and I have to do a bunch of things to bring it up to code. And so I'm responsible for that. And so, do we have the choice to forego those things in this case?
For your worship, to Councillor Liu, we do not, Councillor Liu, because any modification to the building will trigger an upgrade to the code, and the amount of work that we have to do in the building, we will have to bring it up to the current the BC building code.
Okay, and then it seems to me that there are things like asbestos and some other things that were found in the building, and so to remediate those, because asbestos isn't recyclable, is it?
Through your worship, to Councillor Liu, no, it is not.
Okay, so we wouldn't be able to, it has to go in the garbage. It has to be removed properly. There's no other way to get around that, essentially.
Through your worship, to Councillor Liu, that is correct.
So, 99% recycling of the building might be ideal, but in this case, it's not, because of some of the stuff that's in it, it's just not possible at this point.
Through your worship, to Councillor Liu, that is correct, and it also would add additional funding required to even try to meet that percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rao.
Your Worship, I would support the motion on table. Usually, I would support repurposing of an old building for new use. However, in this case, I am not convinced that that would be the best idea. In terms of the conditions of the building, at one point I thought, it might be easy, just fill up the pools and then we put new floors and then we are way to go. But actually, I think it's more complicated than that. And even if we spend the money to repurpose the building, it is only of very limited use and for a very short time. So probably in 10 years, we are facing the same problem. But we spend the $8 million to repurpose the building, and then we still have to spend the money to demolish it at a certain point when it's not usable anymore. And even if we keep the building, it's only for very limited use and for some very passive kind of programming. And it's also very similar to the new restored senior center. So basically, we are not give a money worth investment in terms of making use of it. And I agree that we should, if we're going to demolish it, we have to revert it back into green space. I received complaints in all these years from the public saying that the Minaroo Park is not a park anymore. It's being crammed by all the high buildings around it. So it's looking like, not exactly like a park anymore. So I think if we convert it back into this green space, we make it more park-like. And I would also support the idea that, we should recycle the demolished materials as much as possible, maybe 90%. But I think to achieve a 99% recycling rate would be unrealistic. So I would say to staff, do the best we can, make it, say, over 90%. But realistically, I don't think 99% is feasible. So I would support the motion on the table.
All right, thank you. We're going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor, if I could see your hands. Those opposed. It is carried with Councillors Steeves, Day, and Wolf opposed. All right, that brings us to number 20, which is the Arts and Culture Grant Program. Councillor McPhail, you want to declare a conflict?
Yes, my husband, through his business, is a sponsor of this event.
All right. I'll just briefly say it. Recommendation is that the grant to the Caravan Stage Society for the recommended amount is identified in attachment 1 of the staff report as outlined, be approved, and I would so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Yes, those who watch this closely will note that when we did the Arts and Culture Grant Program, there was no recommendation for any funds going to the Caravan Stage Society. So that's what this is, to ratify that recommendation. I'm not seeing any speakers. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any opposed? That is carried. The next one, Councillor Liu, you have a conflict?
I have a conflict. I'm heavily involved with kids sport, Richmond.
All right, thank you. The recommendation is that grant to Kinsport be awarded and a check be dispersed for the amount of $19,000. And secondly, $5,000 be held back and allocated to sports groups not recognized by Kids Sports, and this be administered by staff. And at the end of the year, any remaining funds be given back to Kids Sport, and I would so move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Yeah, just basically, we've traditionally given roughly $24,000 to Kids Sport, and last year for the first time we said, because Kids Sport doesn't cover every single sport, let's hold back $5,000 and give it to aspiring young athletes. As they would get money from Kids Sport, they would get money from this $5,000, but it would be limited to sports not covered by Kids Sport. And if there's money left over at the end of the year, then it would go to Kids Sport. And so I think it's a worthwhile approach. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just a quick grammatical thing. I would, and number 2, given to Kids Sport, not back to them, because we might spend the $5,000, et cetera, and it's for those that are not looked after by a PSO. So if we could remove the word back.
Yes, I'll take that as a friendly unless anybody's objecting to that. All right, we'll call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? That's carried. And then I think the final resolution on our agenda is for health, social, and safety grants. Recommendation is that the 2021 health, social, and safety grants of $621,864 is identified in the reports, et cetera, as set out on the agenda. And that be adjusted to include the balance of $5,106 for the parish of St. Albans, and that the adjusted total recommended amount of $626,971 be awarded, and secondly, it be issued in the usual way when the 5-year financial plan is adopted. So that's moved and seconded. It's a very extensive list. Staff did a fine job of looking at where we should be applying the money. For a number of reasons, we had $5,100 left, and for a number of reasons, most of the councillors wanted to give that to St. Albans, who have helped us over the years so much, and they do so much good work for people without homes and people having difficulties in our city center. And so I think that that was the feeling. Councillor Rao.
Yes, Your Worship. I would like to move an amendment that of the $5,106 being left in the original proposal, instead of 100% going to St. Albans, I would suggest that $1,000 goes to Richmond. Wait a minute. Richmond Mental Health Consumer and Friends. I hope somebody can second my motion so that I can explain the reason why.
Okay, well, just let's clarify what it is. So what, in the last two lines of that, be adjusted to include the sum of $4106 for the parish of St. Albans and $1,000 to the Richmond Mental Health Consumer Society.
Yes.
For the total, and then the total remains the same. So I'll second that. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. I just want to explain that this Richmond Mental Health Consumer and Friends Society is a history. Is an organization with a long history. It was established 25 years ago with the help of a few very strong advocates for mental health services in Richmond, like Jennifer Larson and also Violet Bassett. So they were the pioneers for the establishment of this organization. And it's a self-help organization. It's the peers helping peers. And on CNCL 1148, it explains why they need the money. On the grant request summary, the bottom fourth line in that box, it said that because of the COVID-19, the lack of resources has not allowed this program to reach to its full potential. So they need more resources so that they can serve more people at this difficult time. And I just want to point out that in a Canadian survey that was completed in about 2 weeks ago, saying that the mental health of Canadians right now, because of the pandemic, is getting worse. According to that survey, in March, since March 2020, at present, only 29% of Canadians say that they're in good mental health. And in BC, it's even lower than that. Only 20% of, or 27% of British Columbians said that they are in good mental health. So we are lower than the Canadian average. And perhaps to many people's surprise, only 20% of the age group between 18 and 34 said that they're in good mental health. So I think that kind of service provided by Richmond Mental Health Consumer and Friends is very much needed right now. I know that this is a very difficult decision, right? It seems that we're taking away from another organization to help this group. But actually, we are not. There are about $5,000 distributed last time. So we are just taking some of the so-called unallocated resources to help this organization. And also on CNCL 1149, they talk about the last year's surplus. And they said that they have a small surplus last year, only due to the pandemic. It's not that there's no need for the service. So they need more resources to help people who are in the community. So I hope that we can use part of the unallocated fund to help this organization. That's why I propose for this amendment.
All right, are there other speakers? This is on the amendment to give $1,000 to this other group. Okay, sorry, did I see another hand? No. Okay, on the amendment to give $1,000 to this other group and $4,100 to St. Albans. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so that is defeated with Councilors Wolf, Day, Steves, McNulty, Lou, McPhail opposed. All right, so we're back on the main motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? It's carried with Councilor Au opposed. All right, that ends the resolutions. I do have some announcements. I have a number of announcements tonight, so I'm going to take a few minutes over this. But I would like, Barry Conkin, would you please turn on your video?
I'm here, Your Worship.
Yes, but the point is you're not going to be here for long. For many on council will know, this is Barry Conkin's actual last day. Barry has been with the city for 9 years. He was hired in 2012, and since January of 2018, council has worked extensively with him because he was the manager of policy planning, which then became the director of policy planning. There are many programs that Barry has been involved in: the single-family building massing review, the residential limits in the ALR debate, the market rental housing policy, the rental 10-year zoning review, farming first strategy. He restructured the Agriculture Advisory Committee into the Food Security and Ag Advisory Committee, providing for restrictions on the production of cannabis, Backlands Policy Review, Industrial Land Intensification Initiative, and he was a liaison to many different groups. So Barry, on behalf of council, I just want to say thank you very much for all the things you have done and being such a great part of council life for the last few years. We will truly miss you. You know, we do value the input that you have given us meeting after meeting, just without fail. So all the best for your future endeavors. I know you'll have a very long, fruitful retirement, highlighted by coming back and helping us out from time to time. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. And now, there's a number of other important announcements. First of all, February is Black History Month all across Canada. The Public Library is offering a variety of resources to celebrate and raise awareness of the legacy of Black Canadians past and present. So if you want to go into the library, they have some presentations there. And also there is a sharing of stories of people in history online as part of Black History Month. If you can use the hashtag BHM, like Black History Month 2021, you will find lots to keep you occupied. Then coming this Friday, can you believe it? We're almost at Lunar New Year. Friday is the day. So we bring greetings of good health and success as we celebrate as we're going into the year of the ox, and hope that it's filled with success and prosperity and great moments for all of you. A reminder for all of you as you take in the Lunar New Year events, and in the local papers they have listings of what they all are. Follow the public health guidelines and just have a great time. Also this coming weekend is the Family Day weekend. The city has over 40 free, low-cost and safe programs and activities planned for the entire family, so check out the ideas. Whether you're into swimming or skating or open gyms or yoga or balloon twisting or wacky science, there's all kinds of different festivities going on. Go to richmond.ca/Family Day and you'll get all the information. And if that's not enough for the weekend, we've got the virtual Children's Art Festival. Unfortunately, it can't be the personal event that it has been in the past, but we've shown that we can really keep it going with the virtual presentations. It's 13th Annual Children's Art Festival. Many of you will remember when Debbie Tobin came to staff and and put forward this ideas, and I think she's still working on it, though not as heavily involved as she was. A professional artist will lead each of the 6 pre-recorded online art programs. All you need to do is to gather items on a list of supplies available online. The videos are offered in partnership with the Gateway Theatre, the Art Gallery, and the Public Library, so go to childrensartfestival.ca and you'll get all the information. Then on Thursday, we're going to celebrate the Artist in Residence. This is, I believe, the 6th annual Branscombe House Artist in Residence, and it's a lady named Rachel Rosansky. At this virtual launch, Ms. Rosansky will describe her creative practice and plans for her upcoming residency. Her talk will be followed by a Q&A session Thursday, February 11th. And if you want to register, that's the best way to get all the details. Go to culture@richmond.ca. Then there's a lot of engagement opportunities for public input that we are welcoming it. First of all, the Steveston Community Center and Branch Library staff is working with the professionals on the concept design for the new center and Branch Library. 3 online design progress sessions take place on February 10th, 11th, and 12th, 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock each day. And architects are going to lead the participants through design ideas and concept and massing and all kinds of feedback. So pre-registration is not required. Go to richmond.ca/facility projects and you'll get lots more information. The Steveston Museum is exploring new opportunities for services at the Steveston Museum. We invite your feedback on 2 exciting ideas that support excellent experiences for visitors at the museum and complement the amenities currently offered in the community. So go to letstalkrichmond.ca from February 11th to learn more and complete the online survey to share your thoughts. And finally, the Railway Bike Park, we've kind of forgotten about that. That was proposed quite some time ago. Input is wanted on Richmond's proposed new Railway Bike Park, which is going to be right at the intersection of Granville and Railway, where it turns that corner to go south. The park is envisioned as an entry-level experience for young and novice riders looking to take up the exciting sport of mountain biking and trail riding. So you can visit letstalkrichmond.ca from February 17th. So those are the announcements, lots going on. Madam Clerk, bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
So moved.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. And the development permit panel.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 recommendations. Recommendation 1, that the minutes of the development permit panel meetings held on November 25th, 2020, January 13th, 2021, and January 27th, 2021, and the chair's report for the development permit panel meeting held on December 11th, 2019, be received for information. And recommendation 2, that the recommendations of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development permit for the property at 9680 Williams Road be endorsed and the permits so issued.
So moved.
Okay, it's moved and it's seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment.
Moved.
Adjournment.
Harold?
Thank you. We are now adjourned.